Originally, I wasn't gonna keep doing the tier list videos like this because admittedly, I'm gonna be real, they don't get the interaction I want to see out of a video like this because I think it's really fun to talk about where I believe Pokemon belong and then to see where y'all agree, disagree, any other takes you got, you know, just the goodness of that type of discussion. You know, it has been going great lately, but you know what? I had a vision, and that vision was, what if I tiered UU? Because the thing with UU, if you look at their tier list, it's a very interesting one for the VR. In the sense that, look at from A- and above. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. That's not a lot of Pokemon to be A- and above. Most tiers, it's a lot greater of an amount, and if you really want to consider what's meta in UU, I think most people would still say a lot of it's like A and above, even though there's definitely some Pokemon down here that would move up. I was gonna say some that up here would move down, but in UU's case, I wouldn't really move anything down. But today, all that to say, I'm gonna make my little personal UU VR after like a month of playing UU quite consistently, I would say. We're going to see what all I have learned, where my meta takes currently lie, all that good stuff. Of course, y'all been enjoying the content as of late. I need you to do one simple thing if you're not yet subscribed, and that is go click that damn button. It is free. It takes no time out of your day other than a couple seconds, and then you don't miss videos. I think that's pretty good. That's all I gotta say. Leave a like if you're already subscribed too. Now, I don't know what pin images does, but I'm not gonna click it. I had to make a personal VR thing because in the UU thread for people's personal VRs, there's just nothing there, which I thought was quite cring. So yeah. So Hisuian Arcanine, I'm gonna be honest, I think this mon's kind of awful. Never once have I encountered this Pokemon and believed that this was a threat to my team. But as a further point, I would say never once have I put it on my team and felt that my team was good. I always feel like these Arcanine teams are just very awkward, because a lot of time you have to use it as a stealth rocker for the slot to feel worthwhile. It doesn't do enough otherwise. Like as a breaker, it's kind of because you either try Choice Band and then Lamau Hazard Control in this tier, or you go Boots and you just never break like half the Pokemon that switch into you. It's also shockingly easy to pivot around. I feel, in my experience, that like between Pokemon like King, Toxapex, and even some others like Cobalion, it's not that bad. It's like, even though it's got that cool Rockhead recoil moves, you know, extreme speed, some utility options if you want like Wisp, Morning Sun, and of course, like we alluded to, Stealth Rock, it's just kind of mediocre. It's also really frail. I have killed this mon with some priority moves that I did not anticipate ever coming into KO range. Like Bisharp suckers, Lokix suckers, Scizor BP. Like, you really don't need any chip on this just because it is all damage and nothing else. So yeah, very, very disappointing Pokemon. Oh, also, just for an aside, the way I decided what's on this list, I just took whatever's on the current UU VR, and then I briefly looked through some stuff below UU, and it was like, huh, I'll put this on here, sure, why not? Hope that's okay with all of y'all. Armorouge. Now, I believe Armorouge should be on the VR. Psychic Terrain isn't really used a ton right now in UU, to my knowledge. At least, you know, my experience has not shown me a lot of Psychic Terrain. But I do believe that if you're gonna use Psy Terrain, Armorouge is one of the best options for the team. Because I'm a level with y'all for a little moment here. Hawlucha, absolute dog shit Pokemon. God, I was talking with good friend Tree, and I was like, yeah, you know, Hawlucha seems really cool. And then you think you're being real cute. You queue up the Stone Edge Hawlucha, and you try to hit a Zapdos at +2, and you do less than 70. And it makes you regret life itself. All that to say, I think Armorouge is a good mon on those teams to actually give them some potency. Armorouge actually does damage. It's really cool, isn't it? So, I like Armorouge for that. That's really all I gotta say. Araquanid. So, here's where one of the things in this VR comes into question for me. Why in the hell is Araquanid on here? Why in the hell is Araquanid here? What's he doing here? Like, Rabombi is just better. This is an example of, I don't think this mon should be ranked. Like, in theory, the reason you run Araquanid maybe over the B is a moderately better Excadrill matchup. But I'm a level with y'all. I don't find that to be necessary at all. When I have played webs in this tier, and I did do a webs video. It's why there's a couple Pokemon on here y'all maybe you didn't expect. Bisharp, ooh, Manaphy, there, Manaphy, ooh. Rabombi versus Drill lead stuff never really mattered to me. Like, I will Terra Ghost Stunspore you turn 1, set my webs up, break whatever. If you have a sash, I'll break your sash too, damn it. And, you know, it's just chill. Like, so I don't really value a rack. I mean, you could argue anyway that webs is so ass that, like, okay, who cares if it's a rack or if it's Rabombi? They're both about the same level of useful, which is to say not very. But I'm gonna say because webs is so ass in general that we probably do not need to include the worst one. Anyhow, Avalugg. So this is a mon where I'm kind of just like, I've never seen this a single time in the tier. In theory, it's a piece for stall. Because, well, it's a good spinner. With Terra, you wall any physical attacker pretty much. Like, even things like Cornerstone Ogerpon aren't really beating you down if you Terra Poison versus them. Okidogi is also a lot worse into you than if it's, you know, whether it's like AV or even Bulk Up. I'm sure you could cheese past it with, like EQ or even Body Press if you force a Terra Dark potentially earlier, assuming that's their Terra type. I mean, again, this is a mon I haven't seen do anything, but I will put it in a comfortable C rank because I believe it's okay enough. We got Azu. I think Azu is like solidly B+. You could argue A-, but B+ is where I start feeling like you're more bordering the meta. And Azu I don't believe to be truly in the metagame in UU. I've liked using AV Azu on some pretty offensive teams. Well, on an offensive team. Shout out to Eternally, passing me a team with AV Azu. It felt pretty alright. It gives you some decent soft checking potential. Priority is really strong. Gives you, like, you know, of course, checking Drill is always really useful. It's a decent low kicks check as well for offense. Not because you'd resist the moves, because of course Tintalin's moment. But you at least don't die from full. And sometimes that's all you really need. So you tank it from full, you play rough it in the dome, it dies. Quaquaval check's always nice to have around as well. In addition to, if you're running like Belly Drum, you've got some nice stuff there too. Obviously requires a lot of setup, but could be worse. Bellibolt, he can be B-. It's basically Zapdos if Zapdos was a large frog instead of a bird. I mean, that is functionally the difference. Also, he learns Toxic. And, you know, Toxic is a nice move this gen since not everything has it. So compared to Zapdos, for example, where Zapdos is going to have to rely on U-turn to deal with, say, Gastrodon. And maybe some other ground types coming in too, although, let's be real, most of the ground types it's fine into. Bellibolt, though, has Toxic. Also could, of course, help with Thunder's Tea. You could throw off a poison on that. And although, yeah, Zapdos can always just beat it down kind of slowly with Heat Waves or even Hurricanes, having that guaranteed chip on it repeatedly is always going to be something that I personally value quite a lot. Even catches something like a Rhyperior still, or like a Hippo if you're worried about those. So I feel like those do, like, solidify it with a niche over Zap. So yeah. Bisharp. I think Bisharp is definitely worth ranking. I do not know why he is not on the VR, but I believe he should be. Bisharp, of course, really good for webs. Just standard, nice guy to have to deter Defiant, or not deter Defiant, I can't speak. Deter Defog. Now you may be wondering, what is defogging in this tier? And you're correct. However, I believe owning the Mandibuzz users is always great, and having a Pecharunt counter is also always really good. I find this mon to be one of the most obnoxious attackers in the tier. And, hey, when it runs Parting Shot, hey, you think it wants to Parting Shot into your... Oh, I just realized Sandy Shock should be here. And Mince should be here. That's so depressing. Guys, you ready to see me fix something real quick? I have to do it. I have to fix this. It's going to bother me way too much otherwise. Feels so much better. And look at that. Now it's permanently fixed. Anyhow, I like having that mon that can just outright deny the existence of Pecharunt. The Violet boosted bulk is also like genuinely really real. Not really anything in the tier one-shots you, especially when you have Terra Ghost, or even just Terra Dark if you want to drop the, for example, the ground weakness versus Drill. Not that you ever should need to, because if you're at +2, you smoke its pack anyway. But if you want maybe a different mon for that example, something like Drapple maybe. Because Drapple is probably going to eat whatever +2 hit you have, because it's just such a bulky Pokemon, and it could retaliate with Earth Power. But if you Terra, it can't, so there's that. Chansey can go and see it. Stall, again, just like Avalugg, it's a stall mon. You're not going to see it anywhere else, but it'll do enough of a job to where you're content. You know, main issue with Chansey is just it is a momentum sap to end all momentum saps. And in this tier, stall pretty much is always having a Mandibuzz for removal from what I've seen. And I don't think Mandy's very good. It's kind of why stall in general in UU is pretty bad. You know, I talk myself sometimes into wanting to put things in unranked just as I address them more. I'm really not sure that stall should be ranked, period. But I also don't want to discount it, because I know damn sure there is at least one user on the PS UU ladder right now laddering stall up in like the 1900s. Anyhow, Chesnaught. I believe he is at least a B rank mon. I think Chesnaught is quite good at what he needs to do. Biggest thing, of course, is the drill matchup. That is the most common remover. You do not lose to Excadrill, unless they are like SD Ironhead and the luckiest Excadrill of all time. Otherwise, you will set your spikes, you can keep coming in versus drill, getting your Rocky Helmet chip, resetting spikes, threatening with like body presses. You've got good recovery with synthesis. And you can have some other options too that you can mess around with, like, you know, Leech Seed, Spiky Shield, Drain Punch, you probably do, although I think you would just always run Body Press. But hey, maybe you want a little extra recovery. Who's to deny you that fact of life, you know? Taunt is okay as well, just because Chesnaught's speed is, like, okay enough. You can taunt some stuff. It's not great, but it's passable. And I mean, hell, look at other mods in the tier it checks. Obviously, Drill is the biggest one. She's got a couple others. You could check Hoopa. Obviously, don't switch into the Psychic move. Please do not do that. But, hey, if you avoid that, then you could check that. You check Lokix pretty decently. You could check Ogerpon pretty effectively. Dogi you lose to, but, hey, you check Quaquaval. Check I said Torn, god. Check T-Tar. Check Zarude. There's a lot of mods that this guy checks. Almost want to say B+, but I'm not sure. You know what? Let's have some fun. B+ Chesnaught, why not? We'll see at the end, just as we always do. Koba! A+, easily. Right now you see him chilling at a crisp A, I believe, on the regular VR. But I think Cobalion being the best stealth rocker by a mile, being the best steel type by a mile. Why? I didn't... Guys... You ever just get really sad because it just decides to turn your tab into a new page or a new browser window? Because I do. Anyhow, best steel type, best stealth rocker. Big thing similar to what we were talking about with Chesnaught too is this mon just dunks on Excadrill because you're too fast and body press murks it. You do need investment technically to one-shot Drill, but you, even with no invest, have a pretty decent chance. With minimal invest, you can make the chance, like, almost guaranteed. It's just very easy to get the benchmark that you need from Mr. Koba. Big things defensively for Koba are checking Ogerpon Cornerstone, even just regular Ogerpon, Zarude, and Hoopa. Big one's Hoopa there. Now, of course, Hoopa can run specially offensive sets. I think Cobalion becomes a very sad, sad man. However, I do still find that it's good enough in that regard to where we can put it up in A+. Comfey. I'm going to put the Demon in B, because I did feel like using Comfey back on that terrain team a while ago was actually pretty successful. I do think grassy terrain, especially in the context of UU, is an insane matchup fish, particularly ever since Iron Crown's left, which was a huge enabler of the archetype. But I still find that Comfey, without the support of the crown, is still actually pretty good. I mean, in reality, Comfey's probably more like a B- mon. I'm curious, where did they have it on their regular VR? B. I mean, I could see it. The thing is, I feel like B- makes more sense when I compare it to some of these other dudes here. So we're gonna go with a B-. Because I think the threat level is insane. I just think you have to use it on some really shit teams. Like, you could use it on a regular hyper offense as well with, like, Spike Stack, and it's still pretty good. I don't know. You know what? I'll put it B just to rate that. How about that? Cyclizar. I do not rate this mon at all. I keep wanting to try it. I keep trying to convince Eternally that maybe it's good. And then he shows me just some random calcs of it trying to be a switch into literally anything. And it failing so miserably. And it's very weird too, because this mon has literally even more than Tornadus. Torn has knockoff U-turn regenerator. But guess what? Cyclizar also has rapid spin. This mon could be a hazard remover. In addition to having all that other annoying bullcrap. But like, when you look at the Greninja calc, this mon, even with Assault Vest, is damn near O-code by Ice Beam from Specs Gren. It's really bleak. This mon lacks the same defensive profile as Tornadus, and as a result, it just really doesn't do anything. Mr. Donphan. I believe Donphan can sit at a crisp B-. I believe he's earned it. He's not a great mon, but I think, yeah, B-, a crisp B-. He gets the job done, is basically how I would put it. Where Donphan, at the very least, can beat Excadrill one-on-one and bother a lot of its switch-ins, primarily Sinistcha and Hydrapple, just with Ice Spinner. Like, Ice Spinner does enough to where they don't want to have to keep switching into you. And in terms of, like, removal, it's at least okay. Like, if we look at a lot of the removers in the tier, you obviously can beat Koba pretty consistently. Rock's Drill is ass, but you technically beat that alright. You pressure Gastrodon super well because this has to run special defense investment to check Zapdos, and so EQ actually does a lot. Gligar gets spun into the Shadow Realm. Hippo is not real. Rock's Mamo isn't real. Rock's Meta's not real. Mew just gets spun on and cries. Oh, it's very funny. You check Rhyperior pretty decently. The only one really that you like hard lose to is Sandy Shocks, and even then, I mean, you still have EQ when you live a hit with. I was gonna say with Sturdy. You don't even need Sturdy. Like, you still live a hit and then threaten with Q. So it's like okay. Empoleon, I'll just keep in C. I don't use Impo, so I'm kind of just relegating it to not move at all. I feel like Empoleon, at the very least, has the benefit of Flip Turn and Rocks and Roost, and that alone is like enough to make me not hate it. It's a Latios check, it's a Grin check. I guess technically it's a Drapple check as well if you're talking specs, because you switch into Dracos and Roost off the damage, and that's pretty good. Yeah, I'm trying to look at anything else here and see if you check it. Not really. But that's okay. It's enough for C, I think. Enamorus-Therian. This is also going to probably go in B for me. Maybe B+. Let me think. Where would I put Enamorus-Therian? Because it's kind of tough when I think about it, where I really feel Enamorus-T goes. I think this mon's got a lot of cool things that it can do. It's just not particularly consistent. And I think that's probably going to put it in B, which is funny because I feel like Comfey is probably consistent enough to go B+. It's just I'm not sold on the teams Comfey goes on. What I think Enamorus is the best at is the stupid Custat Berry stuff with Healing Wish. I think offense just really likes having it around because defensively it is quite bulky. Gives you some pretty decent resistances as well. And ground immune is always nice, especially since Drill doesn't really run Iron Head. It can pivot in on Drill's EQ and like chunk it with Earth Power pretty decently, which is nice. It checks pretty much every Cobalion as well because they don't run a Steel move very frequently. So you can get some free switch-ins that way, and that's also, of course, going to be appreciated. You technically are a Hoopa check, Hydreigon check, Hydrapple check. There's a lot going for it overall with your switching in and in finding turns to, you know, get off some damage. Maybe you want to go for Calm Mind sweeps, which you could still run Custap on as well. If you get low, maybe you Draining Kiss up and get a ton of HP back and you just don't die. Could be pretty cool. Drill! This is an S-ranker. Drill, drill, drill. There's not really anything to say about this mod. I think Stealth Rock is dog shit, but all its other sets are amazing. And I think threat level-wise, Excadrill is like top 3, or maybe not top 3, but top 5, I would say comfortably. Because Sword Stance Drill just does not have great answers, minus, like, the grass types? Like, Ogerpon regular is pretty scary because it's faster than you, it can Encore Lock you, it resists EQ, it doesn't take much from unboosted Rock Slide. Even if you want to spin on it as it switches in, they can always Terra Grass, get the speed boost, and cudgel you into the Shadow Realm. And then you got things like, okay, Serp technically is a check to you. If it comes in on a Swords Dance, it can at least try glaring you, and it will live the hit afterwards, and then maybe you just get cheesed by. And then you've got, like, Drapple is one of the better defensive checks as well. Sinistcha is also pretty good. Past that, I feel like a lot of your checks aren't that amazing. Now, they kind of still rely on you spinning to beat. But like Zapdos and Thunder's Tea, for example, they just don't match up well long term, I feel, because of Rock Slide threat. Also, just, if you want to know why I hate Stealth Rock Drill, it's because they always run specially defensive, pretty much. And god, the Zapdos calcs are so pathetic. Why is my Rock Slide doing 30, bro? Oh, I mean, I guess there's Gligar as well, but Gligar is pretty niche. He's, like, it's a good mon, but it's still niche, you know? Dippity Dippity Doo. Now, this is an interesting mon. Dippity Dippity Doo is very interesting, where, like, I could see it being B or B+. Right now, as you see on the VR, it's only B. But I do believe that the Dippity Dippity Doo could go up to B+. And the main reason for it is this. Right now, Steel types in UU, and I'll refer to this VR anyway, because this is fine. It shows you what the meta looks like pretty consistently. Steel types in this tier are not very real. Excadrill obviously at the top, but then like, it's Cobad A, which takes neutral from Moonblast, and as we talked about, it doesn't really run a steel move a lot. Scizor, which dies to Heat Wave, just goodbye, good night Moon. And then you have to keep going, you're like, Metagross, Tinkaton, neither of them are, like, super meta. And obviously also, like, this would take a lot from Heat Wave too, it's just Moonblast. It can't even switch into that without taking neutral. Drill, like, sure, Drill still takes a lot from, your Heat Wave, but I don't think you two-shot it. So, I like Dippity a lot as a just especially defensive presence. Particularly because it makes the life of Greninja just so much worse. That's really the big thing. I think Grin just getting dog-walked by you is pretty nice. It's also another mon where, like, technically you can kinda check Hoopa. You at least can switch into the dark moves. And I mean, that is valuable enough, in my view, to have it up here. It's a good Lokix check as well. Good regular Ogerpon check. So some of them, again, just a lot of the most annoying mons of the tier kind of get cucked by it. Good Serp check, too, if you care. Fortress! A nice little fortress can make anyone's team a little better. I am of the eternally school of thought, where I believe people really need to stop ragging and hating and tagging and ragging and all of that nonsense over some good Pokemon like the Fortress, bro. Fortress is genuinely, like, good. I don't give a shit what all these people keep saying. You want me to find a reference? Let me cook for us. Wow, this forum update. Look at this amazing art, guys. Oh my god, I too love DDPAUTBODD9DLG. I mean, what the hell's that? Here, you want to see some dog shit? Hold on. Where's the thread? Is it here? Is it here? It is. Where is it? Yeah, let's see. Yeah, here you go. I've never seen someone make Fortress look good. Shut the heck up, bro! What do you mean? The Fortress is a star! This mod is legitimate. And I think a lot of it really just comes down to kind of like Chesnaught syndrome, where spikes aren't super prevalent in the tier, but when you can fit them on a team, god do you feel so powerful. I mean, this mod's physical bulk is not something to scoff at. it's very bulky. So a lot of mons you just trade with and kind of come out on top versus like Drill, you just trade with and win. Mamoswine, you trade with and win. Hoopa-Unbound is a funny guy because again, the special sets will send you back. But if you want to do something like Terra Fighting with Body Press, you can occasionally 1v1 Hoopa. So the Hyperspace Fury, obviously, they're getting monked, right? Something like Lokix you can trade versus. Ogerpons you can trade versus. Dogi, you're bulky enough to where you at least get repositioned super safely against it. I'm sorry, but it's a good mon. I'm tempted to go higher, but I will resist the primitive urge for now. Gardevoir, I think Guard is at least B-. There's frankly some stuff I may even want to move up higher. I'm already noticing. Like, I kind of feel like Gardevoir could go a little higher. I actually just go with Gardevoir and B. The thing is with Gardevoir is it's just like what we talked about Dippity-Dippity-Doo here. The steel types that get used do not check it well. So, like, Drill technically checks it fine enough because Gardevoir doesn't really run Focus Blast a ton, but it's just not a very bulky mon. So Gardevoir oftentimes can still get by with the damage you need on it. Also, AV Gardevoir is like genuinely a good set on it, and that set will have coverage for Excadrill, so for what it's worth, you could bring that up. It'll have like Mystical Fire, maybe Focus Blast still, depending on what you really want to have the extra coverage for between, like, I don't know, T-Tar versus just not missing, and also Tinkaton. But the big thing, again, Tinkaton, Metagross. Mons that you probably won't have coverage for otherwise, because Guard likes Scarf a lot in the tier, and it will be dual stabs with Trick, Healing Wish. Those two steals just aren't so common, so you're dealing with a Pokemon like Koba, which just, it can't switch in, or dealing with Excadrill, which, it's not the bulkiest, so you will beat it long term, and Guard teams frequently will have some of the better Excadrill counterplay, from my experience using and building. So, there you go. Gastrodon, also at least a B rank mon. Arguably B+, by the way, right now, just for, like, defensive presence alone. I'll leave it in B+ too, because it let me cook. Gastrodon's really cool because Zapdos, Greninja are just two of the most broken, oppressive Pokemon in the tier. And Gastrodon handles them both very nicely. Obviously, Zapdos can have U-turn, and then you kind of just are a dead slot, which is why it's going down here, Lamau. And something like, Grin can technically have U-turn as well, although I think Grin with U is a little ass. The worry more with Gastro I have always felt is just how passive it is. And UU does have some mons that are very good at punishing the do-nothing options of the tier. Even something like a Grin. Grin can just try to Dark Pulse spam and hope it gets the flinching. Something like Subplot Hydreigon. That's a mon you don't really want to give a lot of turns to, and it's going to be Terra Steel, and it's going to mess you up bad. Okidogi, it can definitely Terra and just beat you down if it really wants. Giving also mons like Ogerpons, Serp, even Sinistcha, like you give a lot of room to some scary mons, but defensively and then just, you know, Spike, very convenient to have. Gligar, I don't really think Gligar is a real mon, but I think B- is fair enough. It's kind of like, it very poorly checks some very good Pokemon. It's kind of like Gastro, except I feel like it's a little worse at what it does because of the item reliance. So, like, Okidogi, you are technically a pretty good check to Dogi. Thundurus, you technically can check it. The problem is a lot of them are Psychic right now anyway, so they're just gonna 3-shot you. Zapdos, I guess you technically check Zap, but you have to have Toxic to do literally anything to it. But, I mean, on the other hand, hey, it's got... in a tier where Volt Turn is really good, Gligar offers something over Gastro, which is U-Turn. That is nice, it keeps up your momentum, you still offer the same hazard. Genuinely, the more I think about it, I think they're probably about the same tier. So it's either like this, or it's like this. I think I'd sooner just put them both up here. I'm just personally a real fan of Gligar. I feel like it, despite having you, still just kind of sits there and does nothing of note other than be a little annoying utility bot, which isn't really that hard to play against. But beside the point, Gren, A+, my man. I don't know why it dropped in the VR. I really don't think Gren has gotten any worse. Unless they just want to say, like, hey, the VR looks a lot nicer when it looks even like this, which I can kind of get. But I believe Greninja's impact on the builder and in battle is just way too high for A rank. It's not some uncheckable menace by any stretch of the imagination. You've got a lot of mons that do check it. The problem is a lot of these mons are not, like, particularly long-term checks, and outside of things like maybe AV Azumarill, which Sludge Wave will say hello to, or like Pex, which Extra Sensory will say hello to, or Dippity, which will still be said hello to by Extra Sensory, a lot of these mons don't actually really check it well. Like, even something like Tornadus T, if it pivots it on Ice Beam, it has to immediately switch back out, or, like, you know, it better be like Terra Steel or Terra Water, which is not great for it. King can kind of scout Grid as well. It just takes so much damn damage from the Dark Pulses that I don't really love it. This mon is a threat. Grimmsnarl. I'm gonna keep it a stack. I don't see Grimmsnarl ever, and I don't think I would use it ever. Use good Pokemon, please. Malucha, it can go in about C. Again, Side Terrain is not very common right now, or very good. And Lucha has a lot of issues with setting up and sweeping, just given the mons that exist in the tier, kind of stunting on it. But what I will give it is this. It has teammates that can do work, like Poltegeist and Armorouge, so that's enough for me. Haxorus, dude, I've literally never seen a Haxorus once in this tier. How am I supposed to rank Haxorus, bro? What the hell does a Haxorus do? And see, that's why I'm still playing the tier. I still gotta learn. Now, I faced a Haxorus a couple times on ladder. I think it's like a C rank threat. SD Scale Shot is like quite frightening. I happen to be an Air Balloon Tinkaton user with an alarming level of frequency compared to what one may recommend. So, you know, far be it from me to be the person that accurately judge Haxorus. I also like a lot of priority on my teams, as y'all have noticed. I'm a bit of a goblin, what can I say? But, yeah, SDD scale is pretty scary, but I don't think Haxorus is that impressive otherwise. Hippowdon, I'm gonna be real, I've not seen Hippo really over T-Tar at all. I think feasibly you probably have some use for it, with, like, again, how bulky it is. And having phasing, maybe you could fit on a set, although Mono EQ sounds pretty ass. I don't know. I think my issue with Hippo is you are just free Zapdos. You are free Zapdos switching. I'm not using Hippo. Where do they have it? B minus? There's no way, bro, there's no way Hippowdon is the same level of good as Sinistcha. Get the fuck out. This mod is not as good as Sinistcha. Calm down. Hoopa-Unbound. Put this boy up at A+. This mod is broken as hell. The mod does not have real checks. Ban this thing from the tier immediately. That's all I will say. Drapple's tough. There are days where I feel like Drapple's like A or even still A+, like, you know, back when it was at its peak. And there are other days where I do feel like it is just A-, which is where it's at right now. Realistically, I do feel like Drapple is A-. I think the tier is adjusted to its presence quite effectively, with especially some of the other mons that get a little bit of usage now, like Gardevoir, Dippity. Both of those actually do handle it. AV Torn is continuously at a high point. Lokix is everywhere, and I mean, that you may not think that necessarily means a ton, but what I would argue Lokix does is force the Terras really consistently, or just force Drapple to switch out and continue to be nothing but a regen bot. Plus, I do feel like Drapple as a mon has some issues, right? So Specs Drapple I don't think is amazing, mostly because, again, AV Torn. You have to keep draking or fickling, and most teams will have something that punishes you very hard for doing that. On the other hand, I think the bulky sets just face a lot of competition from Sinistcha, which, again, is not a B-. Sinistcha is not Hisui Arcanine tier. Come on, guys. Come on, chat. So yeah, I think Drapple has some fundamental issues, but A- is still really reasonable. Hydreigon, I think this mon is at least B-. I know the live I did with Joey did not inspire confidence, but I assure you, I think Subplot's cool. I saw, it was a PDT, good friend, using Scarf Hydreigon, I believe it was, versus Lily in it was a Smogon SCL. And I mean, it looked cool. It's U-turn. Scarf Dragon is faster than Hoopa-Unbound. Resist hyperspace, or whatever dark move it has. You're immune to the psychic moves. And you've got faster U-turn to be able to get a huge hit of chip off. So I think that's like a cool niche. Good Gren soft check as well. There's like definitely reason. Hydreigon, like right now, right? My mind is this with some of these mons. I think I'll put them out of C because I'm like, these mons I definitely could see something more out of. Or I'm putting this in B- because I'm like, yeah, shit, and probably should be lower. Nah, I'll keep it up here because I do feel like this mon is still like danger. But some of these mons where like you'd maybe feel like C otherwise, I'm like, I think they could trend upwards at least marginally. Dragon has I think in my view, a much higher chance though of trending like upward. Its main issue is competition, right? I mean, literally it's dark type wall break because you got Lokix, Hoopa, Greninja. And then as a dragon type, you still have to deal with Latios and even Hydrapple. But I do think that Dragon has some cool traits, especially through its typing. So, there you go. Indeed, you will go with all your other terrain goblins, and you will say nothing else. I don't know why Iron Thorns is here. I don't know how you got here, buddy. But you're going in unranked. You're going in unranked, friend. I'm sorry to tell you. Jirachi? I've genuinely never seen a Jirachi. What does this VR tell me about Jirachi? Apparently it's a C rank mon. Now let's see. Can I justify C rank Jirachi? Well, it's a Latios check. A very good one at that. I guess it probably counts as an Ogerpon cornerstone check. Perhaps not the best of ones, but technically counts as one. I don't know, man. Am I ever gonna load Jirachi as my steel type over Scizor, or Koba, or Tink, or Drill? I mean, I would rather layer 3 of those over than ever use Jirachi. You know? I think Jirachi is joining the bin. Down here, right in the bin with you. Keldeo. I think Keldeo is a little bit slept on right now. I would definitely say B is reasonable for it. It actually was dropped on last update. I get it. There's a lot of Slowking. There's a lot of AV Torn. I think you can make those matchups a little bit more tenable with, like, Terra Blast Electric. It's not amazing because you still don't get the one-shot. At least on Torn, you don't, I think. But you do enough to where, one, they're immediately forced out, but also, two, they don't really come in again. So Kelly's able to get a lot of momentum like that for it. Once again, it's kind of also just a competition thing where Gren is so much laughably better that I think using Keldeo a lot of time is kind of like, why would you? Unless you just like Keldeo, which I happen to, so. I think B rank's okay. You just gotta use some offbeat sets to really get it to do much. And it's perhaps just a little bit worse into some of the checks that it in Grid share. Latios. I think A rank is pretty good for Latios. It's like, it's so weird. Latios feels like it should be even better in UU, I'm gonna be honest. But in a lot of games where I play against Latios, it's just kind of a threat the whole game. Not some bullshit like Greninja where I'm like, oh my god, please stop getting the Greninja in, but it's like, oh, okay, well they went Latios, alright, let's think this turn through. It's nothing particularly insane. I think some of it has to do with the fact that a lot of the fairy types don't care about it. I'll put it in like Fez and Dippity. It's not that like Oast doesn't still do a ton with Luster Purge. It's just usually they still, again, it's like playing wise, right? Tinkaton will still feel okay into it, right? Guard will still feel okay into it. Even something like Enamorus, I don't think it's two-shot if you've got some bulk. And Comfey naturally has Draining Kiss to outspeed, so Lottie has to Terra. He wants to win that exchange. And then, yeah, Tinkaton just walls, so there's that. Lokix, now this is a big one. I actually do think Lokix is S rank. I think Lokix... One, Lokix is just way too easy to throw on, like, every team in this tier, because it is the best form of speed control. You have practically unresisted First Impression plus Sucker Punch combo, practically unresisted U-turns, and then you still also have knockoffs, so mons like, you know, Helmet Cobalion, I was gonna say Helmet Tinkaton, but let's stop real quick there, that's not a thing. But you can get rid of Koba's helmet, you can get rid of Zapdos's boots, and then from there it's just nowhere near as good of a switch into you. Because again, your U-turns, it does not resist those. And in first impression, dude, like look at some of these mons right at the top, bro. I am keeping in check things like Drill, because again, tinted lens. Grin, Lottie, Hoopla, Drapple. Even down here, bro, even things like Scarfguard and Spexcalio. You are keeping them in check with your Terrabug first impression so successfully. And it's kind of funny, right? I think Hoopa is a huge reason for why teams feel like really restricted in the builder right now. I think what Hoopa does in terms of the very small pool of checks it mandates you pick like one of 3 options from is a big reason why UU's VR looks the way it does. But Lokix, let's not, pretend like Lokix doesn't do a lot of the same stuff, right? I think Lokix just has a slightly wider pool of checks of like mons that kind of bother it a little more. And that's why, Lokix doesn't get the same threat level hype maybe. But I think in terms of what it offers to the tier, it's like easily S rank. It's not even a question in my mind. Mamoswine. Mamoswine, to me, is always going to be a mon that's like, almost its entire like viability case is based on potential in a way. Because in theory, the mon should ravage almost every matchup because of the coverage it gets, and then just having Ice Shard for priority because it bothers some of your otherwise good revenge killers. Something like a Serperior could pick you off of the Leaf Storm, but hey, you got Ice Shard to do 500 million. Same like Ogerpon and Ivy Cudgel. For the purposes of this ranking, I think I will put Mamo just like B, because it is pretty hard to build with. The big thing about UU is if your ground type can't even pretend like it checks Zapdos, it's a little bleak. You really have to compensate hard in the builder for what Mamoswine doesn't do defensively. It is pretty much just a mon where all of what it offers you is offensive. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just, I feel like it puts a cap on how good it really can be. So, there you go. Manaphy, so again, another mon that I added myself. I am putting Manaphy in a very honest C, because Webs is viable, and Manaphy is good on Webs. Leave me the fuck alone. Mandibuzz, I'm gonna be real, bro. I'm gonna put Mandy in like B-. It's not even because this mon's bad. I just really don't like how passive it is, even with Foul Play and Toxic and Knock. And it has a lot of moves where you would think it wouldn't be super passive. I still find that it's way too passive. I think the turns that you are spent Forced to Roost, because it honestly gets knocked pretty frequently in games. Forced to Roost, trying to defog, wasting turns throwing off a Foul Play into like the Koba swap or whatever other mon swaps into you for free, of which there's like 500 million. You just lose a lot of momentum with this Pokemon. And I think defensively, sure, it checks some things like Hoopa. You bother some physical attackers with Foul Play like Excadrill. But some of these mons are also like one lucky turn away from absolutely ending your existence and reminding the entire world why you are a Mandibuzz and not a good Pokemon. So that's where I'm at with it. Metagross, I'm gonna keep it at a crisp B+. I like Banded Meta. I think Banded Metagross is quite strong. Heavy Slam is a hilariously easy move to spam repeatedly. God, what was that set? It was like 4 attacks with just 3 dual stab moves, and then boom. That meta set was very fun to use a few videos ago. I'm gonna be real, the only issue I have in meta is I think compared to the other steel types, it does a lot less for you defensively. Which is fine, because it means you can get a lot of mileage out of it offensively. I just think then you have to pass the Scizor threshold, where, well, Scizor is another option too. How well does it compete with Scizor? I think it, for pure wall-breaking sets, is probably better than Zor, but overall, Scizor is like a lot easier to get on teams, especially because you don't add the weaknesses Metagross does through its psychic typing. Mew, I haven't seen so everything I've been told is that Mew is like the best HO lead for the tier. I have not seen a single Mew HO. Like, feasibly, I think Mew is probably like at least a B- mon as a hazard lead. I need to see it actually do something at some point, so there you go. Milotic. I could see Milotic also a crisp B-, kind of the mold of like a Bellibolt or a Fortress or a Dragon, where I think there's some cool potential to it as an alternative to some superior options. In this point, I would say Slowking is the superior option here, because it's a bulky water that pivots. Yeah, you really see we're doing a lot of thinking here. But the big thing for Milo is kind of like similar to Inu, where I think you just have an easier time fitting like random extra moves on your moveset. Like Slowking just feels very locked into Chili, Scald, Slack Off, and then T-Wave usually. I think Milo has a little bit more room to explore, which it really shouldn't feel that way because they both have Scald, single turn recovery, and then Flip. It just, I don't know, man. This is a bit of a vibes thing here, but I do also like that compared to Slowking, and even compared to Pex, kind of, Milo has arguably a slightly better Gren matchup. Maybe not Pex, but at least compared to King, which is, you know, the comparison we're making, because they both are the water pivots. Being able to at least not be weak to Dark Pulse is pretty huge. And although you're not doing a ton back with Scald, it's enough to at least pressure the dude, which I like. Mimikyu. I've not seen this Pokemon a single time, so goodbye, Mimikyu. Nah, it's probably okay on HO. I think for like the same stuff in RU it does. Plus, again, we can go back to the point of how Cobalion doesn't really run Steel moves a lot right now, which just makes it an inherently worse spawn into you. I'd say the big issue for it is how many Dark types are at the top of the tier, and how they're all faster than you. Now, I guess Hoopa's a nice one to queue into because it doesn't resist your Shadow Sneak, but Gren does, Lokix does. It can be a little bleak. Okay, for what's worth, Lokix actually isn't faster, it just has a million forms of priority. I think C is fine for it, though. Now, this is one of the interesting ones. Ninetails. I added this mostly just because Torkoal is in the tier, and so it's kind of just to field the question of, is regular-ass Sun any viable in the tier? Now, y'all have seen me run into Sun a couple times in videos. Also, it's hilarious, I don't even have Venusaur on here, but I have Ninetales. I don't have any of the Chlorophyll mods, I literally just have Ninetales. And I'm gonna say the answer is probably straight up no. I don't think it's gonna be a particularly worthwhile style to try, because the mods you're trying to use are kind of all dog. Like, the best abusers you have access to are like Sandy Shocks and probably Hisuian Lilligant. And Hisuian Lilligant's got some very real issues with the prevalence of mons like Pecharunt, not really that prevalent, but still common enough. Okidogi, Skeledirge, and even Zapdos. You've got ways to beat Zap, but it's not great. Even things like Torn can be a little bit of a wrinkle in the matchup. And I find that combo mons just limits Sun way too heavily. Especially when you consider, yeah, I mean, the abusers are not very good otherwise either, so there you go. Alolan Ninetales. Veil is not used at all in this tier, and there are no Slush Rush teams to be had, so this is our first D rank. Because it is technically a UU by usage. Also, I'm just going to throw Torkoal there now too, nip that in the bud. I agree with how the UU VR is set up on this. There's just not anything worth saying about Torkoal that wasn't already said with Ninetales about some point. Regular Ogerpon. Now this one's a tough one, because I think this one has a lot of like real fundamental issues with how it can perform in the tier, just because of what's good in UU. It's simultaneously, though, still like a pretty damn good utility option, and so I don't want to rate it very lowly. It's just hard to put it very high as well. You know, like, I can't really justify something like this, right? Because I feel like this one gets absolutely cucked by so much. Though I will admit, seeing Terra, Grass, Ivy, Cudgel, two-shot Cobalion with a spike up is hilarious. I think you could argue at least for this one to be B+, because utility-wise it still offers a lot. Fast Encore is really good. You can knock a lot of Pokemon's items as well and just make them a lot easier for your team to deal with. So like Scizor, for example, benefits a lot from this Pokemon's support, because you're knocking Pokemon like Cobalion, you're able to also just chip away at Cobalion, Maybe you set a Spike instead. That helps weaken Koba. Knocking Zap is good so that you can have Stealth Rock, hitting it and forcing it a lot lower too. Just like there's an idea of core, right? Even something like Hoopa-Unbound, you could argue similar synergy if you're talking potentially like Scarf Special Hoopa-Unbound. Because you don't have to go Sword Stance on this for it to sweep late. You can just rely on Terra Grass, get the speed boost and Cudgel spam. And Scarf Hoopa lures in a lot of this mon's checks. Like, for example, Koba, Tinkaton, potentially even Zapdos if they're trying to pivot in very greedy. Although it's more that Zap would come in. I guess it doesn't really lure Zap's the issue, because Zapdos is going to be coming in after a KO most of the time. To say it tanks a hit and maybe it has U-turn and it pops you for 1,000,000. But yeah, all that to say, I think Ogerpon really wants to try to be better. It's just tough because Cornerstone. Ogerpon Cornerstone is significantly better. As a wall breaker, it just having dual stab means so much. So you get the Rock Ivy Cudgel, but you can then have Power Whip, which is, I think, literally stronger than Grasspon's Cudgel. And it just makes it really hard. It makes it really hard to sell anyone on regular Ogerpon. Now, I'll say this. This is the big difference. This Mon is much better as, like, an offensive Mon / breaker. Regular Ogerpon is a lot better for utility stuff. I think every time I run into, like, Spike's Ogerpon Cornerstone, I breathe a sigh of relief. Because this Mon is dog at being supportive. I don't think it's a very good supportive Mon at all. I think you always just run, like, spiky 3 attacks or, like, 4 attacks and maximize your coverage. Like, otherwise, just use this one at that point. Take advantage of the fact that this Mon isn't weak to ground. Like, neither is this, but it's resistant. I think the big knock against Cornerstone is just awkwardness to team build with. Because compared to all the other grass types, it does not resist ground. And a lot of Cornerstone teams do feel a lot weaker to Excadrill as a result. Still a really scary breaker, especially if you get predictions right, but definitely got some issues. Okidogi! He goes up to A+, because this Mon has like 4 incredible sets, maybe you could argue 5. Like, Scarf's great, Assault Vest is great, Bulk Up's great, Sub is great, whether it's Sub Bulk Up or just Sub 3 attacks. I think Bandit even is reasonable. And they all put in lots of work. And then again, we talked about like Dogi defensively. Like, it checks this guy here, Mr. Cornerstone, Mrs. Cornerstone. It checks low kicks. It technically can check Hoopa, but let's not talk about that. It's a Gren check if you're AV, which is really useful. It's a regular Ogerpon check as well. It's Keldeo check with AV. Although, Keldeo Keck. Was there any Mon down here that I should mention as a check? That is a check too. Zaruda's a check. Serp, it's a check. Zapdos, you check with Terra Electric, which is cool. Just very, very reliable Pokemon. A very good guy. A very cool dude. Pecharunt. I'm going to put Pecharunt in B+ as well. Admittedly, I don't feel like this Mon puts in a lot of work in games, whether it was me using it or me facing it. It just ends up being consistently an incredibly annoying roadblock because of how amazing its physical bulk is. And I think it's really easy to find game states where you accidentally lose your Mon that can pressure this sufficiently enough to beat it. Because there's a lot of physical Mons that just do not pressure it enough. Like, for example, Ogerpon Cornerstone just does not. Okidogi, it just does not. And if these are your breakers by the end of a game, you're kind of dead in the water against Pecharunt, and it will just sit around being this absolute menace to society that you'd really rather not. Poltegeist. So Poltegeist gets to be 1 sub-rank above the other terrain shitters, and you know why? Because it doesn't have to be on terrain with them. Next Pokemon. Quaquaval. This Mon is like constantly just... I really want to say it's good. I'm putting it in B. The main thing for me, right? Every time I look at it, I'm like, okay, surely this Mon is 1 coverage move away from being absolutely impossible to deal with and sweeping every team off the face of the earth with SD, Aqua Step, and Moxie. And then every time I try to figure out what that coverage is that I want, I can't settle on a good move. I always feel like I'm losing to something very hard, and as a result, I just hate putting Quavo on my teams. I think B is probably, like, realistically a little low for it. I'm gonna... No, not A-. I think I'll keep it at B+. If this Mon had 5 move slots, it'd be broken. Let it be known. I think probably Terra Blast Electric is good. With Dual Stabs SD, are you weak to something then? Is there something that still walls you? Right, that's the problem, it's Sinistcha. And if you go like Terra Blast Dark or something, or even Knockoff, you're still just checked by X. And it'll like haze, spam, and recover up, and just be annoying as hell like that. So, I don't know. Quavo's an awkward mon. Revavroom. Fuck you, Revavroom. Rhyperior. Probably just still B+. It's a very good Zapdos check. The only issue now, and what could potentially start pushing Rhyperior down to like B, is U-turn Zapdos becoming more common. And honestly, yeah, I think it does push this down. Because I feel like Rhyperior's entire thing, beyond having just a naturally really good offensive profile, with how bulky it is in tandem with how strong it is, and like the convenient coverage you can throw on it, like with moves like Mega Horn, Ice Punch, even Dragon Tail just as phasing is good. But Zapdos starting to run U-turn more, Thundurus being able to run U-turn if you really want as well, slash still having Focus Blast a good majority of the time to clock your, you know, to clock your block, knock your block off, whatever the hell you want to say. I think it does make it a lot harder for it to function defensively. So, it's tough. Rabombi's going in C still, I like it. Rotom-Wash, I think Washtom's like, it's B+ to me. I think Washtom's biggest issue is it's not a fucking drill check. Unless you run the stupid ability shield, which all of you have seen me try to do repeatedly, and it does freaking nothing. And honestly, the more I look at Washtom here, the more I realize Washtom's definitely more like a B rank mon. I could not in good conscience put Rotom-Wash over mons like Gardevoir, Gastro, Enamorus-T, Swine, Keldeo. Like, no, I just can't. This mod is B. It's genuinely kind of just ass. It doesn't do much to a lot of things. Like, at the end of the day, at least you can always Volt Switch on everything, and being a water type that threatens ground types, or a water type threatens grounds, obviously. I'm gonna say an electric that threatens grounds with a water move is really helpful. I'm just like, at the point, just use Zapdos, bro, and just U-turn spam on them anyway. Like, who cares? Use Thundurus and just be more threatening offensively. Like, who cares? Oh, God. Mence, I think, has to be, like, no higher than C until Zapdos leaves. There's definitely some potential here with DD Mence, but for now, I think you have to keep it C. Zapdos is just too big of a roadblock. It's everywhere, and it clocks your shit. Sandy Shocks. Now, this one's gonna be my happy take. I'm thinking an A-, and I really don't understand why people hate this one so much. I made a post when it dropped even lower. It was like to B or B-. And I was like, why the hell is this one dropping? I don't understand. This is a good Pokemon. And someone responded with a wall of text that I just did not agree with. I definitely understood their points, but I just did not agree with them, if that makes sense. I think the point about Power Gym being a kind of dog shit move is fair, but at the same time, you don't need it to be a good move. It does enough to Thundurus and does enough to Zapdos, to where you are still a switch into them. And that's really all I care about. Plus, I think Terra Blast is, yeah, like, oh, Mon needs Terra. I don't really care. Like, if the Mon is really good with Terra, like, it is really good with Terra. View it through that lens. Like, yeah, it sucks if you have to use it, but if I have to Terra Blast Ice the Zapdos, I will Terra Blast Ice the Zapdos. Same with the Hydrapples, same with the Ogerpons as they're switching in, and same with the Okidogis, which I'm not Terra Blasting, I'm Earth Powering, but you get the idea. I believe this thing's speed tier is also quite valuable. It does, unfortunately, sit at the spot of, like, being fast, but still not, like, the fast for the tier. So, like, that type of ones, like Ogerpon, Torn, Greninja, yeah, basically those mons. It's like a notch below them, which kind of sucks, but it's still fast enough to threaten a lot of builds very consistently. Scizor! Admittedly, I hate using Scizor. I hate building with Scizor, but I'd be a little bit silly to put it any lower than A. The only issue Scizor has right now is coverage, and I mean, hey, in 2 weeks that might not be an issue anymore. Pretty much the issue is you need SD always, you need Bullet Punch always. And then you really want to have CC for Zapdos. not Cobalion, but you need Knock for Zapdos. And if you're running like the pivot set with U-Turn as well, well, you only have one move slot. So of course, this is to say, offensive SD Scizor does not have this issue. You can fit both Knock and CC very, very easily. The problem still is Zapdos is faster, and it Heat Waves you and you die. And Scizor doesn't really like running defensive Terras too much with that set, because then you're just weak to hazards, or you're Terra Electric, and Terra Electric is kind of just whatever on Scizor. Like, it's fine, but it's not particularly good. And you still also have to deal with some mons like Pex, just is sitting in front of you forever and not dying. And there's a decent amount of mons faster than you that will not die to Bullet Punch either. Serp, I think Serp's a little ass. I'm putting it in B+. This is... Maybe you will see this and say, hey, you're just mad that you missed a ton of Leaf Storms, yeah? Yeah? Yeah, I am. Mad? Cry about it. I don't know. Serperior to me has always been a little bit overrated in UU. It's obviously a really annoying mon because you just glare all of the stupid mons like Tornadus that would otherwise switch into you relatively safely. And then they're just annoyed the rest of the game. I just don't feel like it really exerts a threat level like the other mods at A- or higher. Like, you could argue it's at least on par with Sandy Shocks, but let me homerism hit for a moment, okay? Sinistcha, another mod where I'm gonna put in B+, even though it's normally B- in the VR. I don't know why it's so low. I think Calm Mind Sinistcha is incredibly, like, consistent as WinCon. And being a really good drill check is just another, not, you know, feather in its cap, so to speak. Decent Ogerpon check as well, just because you're so bulky, even Cornerstone's not two-shotting you, which I like. Spin blocking also is really, really good, and as I've talked about repeatedly, I do value spikes for highly in UU. So, yeah, Sinistcha has to go up here. I think really the only annoying thing is frequently your Terra Poison, and it does mean you're just weak to drill, but so be it, bro. So be it. Skeledirge, I don't love Skelly, but I do feel like it's still at least about an A- mon. It's just, I don't know. I think Skelly definitely benefits from fire resistances and UU being a bit of a joke, past the Slowkings and Pexes of the world. And hey, guess what? You could Will-O-Wisp Pex the Pexes, and well, King, if it ever gets statused, is taking 1,000,000 from X. So that's helpful. The offensive Skelly stuff, I'm not sure how good it is, really. But I think it's at least... I think, again, all this combines at least to get Skelly to A-. Plus, it, you know, Unaware does let it clock a lot of random setup. So there's that. Slowking, obvious A+. It's just an incredible pivot. Forms those annoying region cores of Pokemon like Tornadus T and Hydrapple. Just very, very annoying to deal with and to try to actually break, man. Thundurus T, little rise on my version compared to the official VR. I do think it's an A rank mon instead of just A-. One of the better Zapdos answers around, and also just one of the most just annoying breakers. And honestly, pretty decent defensive profile too. I think there's a lot of mons where you just take hits from that you really appreciate it doing that from. I would say Serp and Ogerpon are two of the more common ones. Obviously this one, not the Cornerstone. This guy clocks you. Checking Scizor is also pretty helpful though. And get enough chip damage on it, you can just revenge kill it. It's also very good at exploiting Cobalion because you block its Volt Switch. You obviously block Thunder Wave as well. And you take like nothing from Body Press. So, pretty good mon. Tinkaton. I'm actually also a Tinkaton supporter. I do think it's still an A- mon at least. I get the dislike for it, of course, because it does kind of momentum lose compared to Cobalion. I've just also felt that its defensive uses are enough to justify calling it a bit more meta than what B+ would imply. Like, I have consistently felt Tinkaton offers a lot in my games, especially with just moves like Knock and T-Wave, always giving me something in any given matchup. Torn! Of course he's S. I mean, come on, dude. It's Tornadus T, bro. I will say, I went through an arc where I didn't really think Torn was on the level of Excadrill, but at this point, I put it on so many of my teams. I think at this point, it's like, even if I don't think that in terms of how it, how good it is, it's S rank, I do think that in terms of how easy it is to use on teams, it is S rank. To dumb it down, to simplify it, I should say, it probably isn't actually S rank, but this mon goes on every build of mine, and that alone has me feeling S rank at this point. Pex, I do think Pex is like A-. Much like Tinkaton, there will be games where you just feel like it's doing fucking nothing but sitting there and inciting a riot. Just by you will see your opponent's reaction in chat and they'll be like, please stop. But I think Pex, big thing it offers over King is that it's actually a Lokix check, and this kind of goes into what I was talking about earlier, where I do feel like Hoopa is insanely constricting in terms of what it forces teams to run to check it, and banning it would allow teams a lot more freedom, because Lokix, although it is still really constraining too, the pool of Pokemon does actually grow. Like, Pex is not really a Hoopa check at all, obviously, right? You have to burn your Terra to even consider checking it, and even then you may still lose because of hazards getting up if you get knocked. I didn't get like psychic to down or something, and I'd be knocked by a teammate, not knocked by the Hoopa. So I like Pex being around. It's a good helmet pivot too, and you actually have a lot of item options. I like helmet. I've liked eject button. Boots is fine too. You could even technically make it a Zapdos check if you go like Terra Ground. And you can hit him with the Terra Ground into the Toxic. It makes you a Thunderous check too. Pretty cool mon. Not at its peak, of course, but still good. T-Tar, T-Tar's probably like B+-ish. I think supportively, it's pretty nice to enable Sandrush Excadrill. So like we talked about earlier, Drill is probably, somewhere in like that top 5 for just threat level in the meta. And T-Tar can exacerbate that issue for teams a lot by making the Excadrill faster than your entire team too. And the really cool thing with synergy between the two is Adamant Tyranitar with literally like no EVs, will still beat Hydrapple with an Ice Punch. I think you like literally OHKO it just by going Adamant. You may need like a little invest, but it's a really nice calc to have. So the synergy there is really good. It's a good mon. Volcanion. I would be lying to you if I said I had ever seen a Volcanion in this tier. So let's see, where did they decide it goes? B-. Well, it's definitely not the same good level of Sinistcha. Reality is that, it's a tier with Slowking in it, so you probably have to Terra this mon pretty frequently. But I think, just given what on paper Volcanion seems like it would do, I think I can vibe with a B- placement for it. Being immune to Grin Surf is pretty big. And other than Slowking, I do feel like you could break the meta apart pretty successfully. So, sure. Zapdos. I think Zapdos is definitely an S-rank mon. I know there was a point where UU players kind of just decided Zapdos had fallen off. I don't really feel like that's still the case. I think Zap definitely did go through a bit of a low point when people were super over-prepping. And people still prep plenty for it. I just don't feel like the prep is necessarily that reliable. It's definitely good. Like, Zapdos is not broken anymore. It's just one of the most obnoxious mons to have to face. Coverage-wise, Heat Wave, Hurricane, and an electric move, whether it's like Volt Switch or even if you go like Discharge and have Roost Blast, it's just very hard to switch around. Even with a freaking Gastrodon, you are very, very possibly getting Hurricane confused, hitting yourself like once after the switch in, and then just losing the exchange. Which is, not really what I want to see. So I think Zapdos is really good at just exerting pressure like that. And of course, you look at Monster checks in the tier. It does check Lokix, it checks Exca, it checks literally checking all the other S ranks. And then it should look even lower, bro. It's a Koba, like always you can switch into Koba. You're a good Okidogi check as well. And wow, my vision has gone horribly blurry. This is fun. You're a great Dogi check. You're a great Scizor check. I mean, dude, come on now. The mon is S. Come on. And then the last mon is Mr. Zarude. I think A- is fine for it. I'm not a huge Zarude fan. I do think, though, that SD Taunt stuff, or not SD Taunt, SD Jungle Healing, was very evil. And it will not be leaving my memory anytime soon. I think Scarf Zarude is okay. Just as, like, a nice fast Dark type to have. The main issue is it's kind of just all that is. It's a fast Dark type, so... I mean, you can at least knock things like Zapdos pretty well. You have CC for Koba, which is nice, but otherwise it's kind of whatever. So this is my little personal VR. Let me know what y'all think down below. I hope y'all enjoyed. I'll catch y'all next time. I might need a nap now. Peace.